Hi everyone, cold open today. First off, welcome to our 1 year anniversary bonus episode. Today, journalist and Toronto Metropolitan University graduate Kuwarjeet Singh joins us on the pod as our first official guest. He'll also be interviewing us about our 1 year and 10 episodes of podcasting. I think you're in for a treat today and you'll really enjoy this interview. Second, due to the producer, that's me, not clearly communicating, we don't have Kuwarjeet's side of the recording. Oops. So, we've replicated the interview questions he asked us to the best of our ability. What you'll miss out on is some interesting banter and several off-the-cuff interjecting questions. Other than that, the interview is more or less intact. Both Paul and I would like to give a big thank you to Kuwarjeet. He's an award-winning Sikh journalist, a content creator, and a talented storyteller, I can tell you from personal experience. He was born in Chandigarh, India, and raised in Brampton, Ontario. I'll have all his info linked in the description if you're looking for a journalist or content creation, copywriting, all that kind of stuff. He's awesome. With that being said, now on to the interview. Enjoy. Thank you so much for doing this. Paul, thanks for being here. This is our third I suppose recording within 7 days for me and Paul, because on Saturday we went to record, or was it Sunday? On the weekend last week we tried recording and then Paul accidentally stopped recording within like 5 minutes, so we had to re-record on Tuesday.
Yeah, last weekend was technical difficulties day.
Yes.
We had yet to experience this.
I know on our 10th episode we had our first technical issue. Yep.
Yeah.
So you want to lead this? You the profesh.
Yeah, the first question was, how did you guys get started?
Paul, do you want to start or?
Yeah, I mean, it was Norman's idea pretty much. He wanted to do a podcast, and so he asked me like, hey, do you want to do it? And I was like, sure, let's do it. I was like, I didn't expect it. It was completely random. I didn't know that, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know Norman is interested in this type of stuff. So it's not random in the sense that it came from him, but I never thought I would do a podcast or be involved in anything like this. So very puzzling for me in that sense, I would say. Yeah.
Well, obviously, since we're all on a call right now, I thought it would be a great way just to because Paul and I know each other back from our student days in Granada, Spain. That's where we met for the first time, and I thought it would be a nice way just to like also just hang out with my buddy instead of just texting every once in a while something stupid. So this is a fun way to also hang out with my buddy.
Yeah. I think it's been good for that too. And he asked me though, like, okay, but what topic should we do? And so we did like brainstorming for probably a few days maybe, and we came up with some different ideas, and then we did like a call like this and talked about which ones we liked and stuff, and the different possibilities, and we just chose some, and we kind of have changed a little bit over time with some of it, but mostly stuck to what we chose.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. I remember just calling you up one day, and then we had like a long call. Like, I don't know, I was like an hour or two or something. We were just chatting, catching up, talking about it. And but yeah, pretty much. I still have that brainstorming session recorded because we did it on Zoom and it was terrible. But I thought it would be one day some fun bonus content. So it's it's recorded. There's some
Wow.
there's a shitty Zoom video with Zoom audio on it, which maybe one day we'll publish just for funsies.
I didn't actually know that he had that on a recording.
What have you guys learned about each other while recording these sessions, and what is something surprising throughout that learning process?
I'll let you Go, Norman.
Oh, my highlights is every time Paul talks about music. I like when Paul talks about music, and he brings in his. He likes to listen to a lot of international music. It could be French or like some Portuguese or something something. So Paul's an interesting person like that. So I feel like we need to reincorporate that back into the podcast a little bit more because I really enjoyed him just exploring his love for music. Because Paul's also I'm a little bit of a musician himself, so I really like. Listening to his thoughts on music and stuff. And I guess another surprise probably for me was we kind of just kind of fell into it by accident because on the pod, the whole if I were king parentheses of the world is that's kind of that's the gimmick I suppose of the podcast is that's the main topic we talk about one thing we'd change and how we do it and why we do it and stuff like that. And then the other half we kind of left it to be open, and then we've kind of now dubbed it Cultural Corner, which is just like we just talk about things around the world. It could be something very specific to either maybe Vancouver or Albuquerque, or it could be something like for example, like these like mini buses in Mexico or in like rural Poland and stuff, or the Albuquerque hot air balloon show, which is really cool. So I really like getting into those things because it's always a little bit fun and interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And we get into stuff that like we share things that we wouldn't know about each other's country or about the world or about music or culture in different areas. So it's kind of, and it encourages us to like learn about things that we didn't even know possibly about our own country or about other countries. And so it's a good learning thing. Also, one thing that I learned or realized was I initially remember, Norman, I was like, oh, we should share music. But then Norman reminded me that you can only share like 7 seconds of a song on a podcast, which is so like disappointing. I think it's kind of like frustrating because in reality we're doing free marketing or free advertisement for somebody's music if we share it on a podcast, so and say their name and give them credit for it. So I find it kind of frustrating that you can't like play a song and say, this is a song that I like, here's why I like it, here's what the lyrics are and what they mean and stuff, and then share it on the podcast. But you can't do that, and it's kind of frustrating.
Well, we kind of can. We can get into the details actually later and to how we do it. But yeah, we can actually.
Yeah.
There's a way to use it in fair use, so we can talk about it a little bit later, and then we can. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. So.
Gotcha.
How has your experience been so far, and what have you guys learned about each other while recording these sessions?
Norman, why don't you go first?
I think you have something in mind. I think you should go.
It's been fun because on the topic of like, if I were a king of the world, what would I do? It opens like like the central concept is totalitarian, right? It's like if you had total control of the entire world, what would you do? And the thing is, like, I don't know if to say like Norman takes a bit more serious of an approach than me, but mine is very satirical most of the time. It's like, it's an idea where I kind of want to change something, but I usually just turn it into the biggest satire possible of like just the most ridiculous way of doing that thing that I want to implement, that change. And so it's never serious. But then it can be, but with like a serious overarching theme, but then a lot of underarching satire and irony and ridiculousness. And then you kind of asked like, what have we learned about each other though? So that's one thing that I learned about myself if you give me a microphone. But Norman, I guess he's just really easy to talk to about a lot of stuff because he's a good listener, and he also has a kind of organized way of speaking about stuff, because, well, and like keeping us on track and stuff, because I do get kind of lost in that crazy satirical comedy stuff, and he kind of is more down to earth, and like, yeah, it kind of grounds the podcast so it's not just chaos or too long or too, so yeah, I think he's really good at a lot of this type of stuff.
You're gonna make me blush, Paul. I mean, most of the time I'm just thinking about like, I have to edit this, so shut up.
That's good too,
I mean, what I've learned is that Paul is way funnier than I used to think. Because Paul is no, he's a funny guy, man. So I just really like speaking to him, and then just getting into these different. He's got a different worldview than me a little bit. Like he just thinks of like, just like every person does. The longer you sit down with somebody and talk to someone, you learn like the nuances on like how he thinks and approaches like the world. So I really like that. He's I feel like I have to say nice things because you said all nice things, Paul.
You can say other things.
But I mean, other things we learned. I mean, like on my side, because I do all the editing and all the social media and stuff. So it's really that's some hard work sometimes. Like just audio editing is pretty straightforward. But then I like to put like I do a little video version of every pod, which is so I learned a little bit of Adobe After Effects, some super basic stuff, and then there's like social media management kind of stuff, which is like making social media assets and stuff, which is I suppose is marketing, which is my day job nowadays as a marketing and comms person. So it's it's so tedious.
Yeah,
but yeah, it does kind of learn a little bit. Like it's almost like a little bit of a business lesson, to be honest. Like you need to if money isn't really the first thing we're thinking about here. We don't make money off this. We do this because it's fun. But it's still like a little business lesson nonetheless. It's like it's a lot of work just to share and promote what you do just because you think it's fun or you want to sell something. So yeah, there's been a lot of those kind of lessons for me, just kind of on the back end of things. And I'm still trying to get better at audio editing and more efficient and better ways we can do things. So yeah, I think I think that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah. So what are some when it comes to the future, what are some things you guys are thinking about?
Paul, do you want to go, or
uh
I can go first if you're not ready?
you go first. Yeah.
All right. Well, so just thinking in the future, I'd like to continue doing this because I like to maintain, number one, my friendships, because it's very easy. Even though we're more connected than ever, it's easy to just lose those friendships too at the same time, just over text. So I'm very happy to maintain my friendship with Paul like this because I think it's very strong, and and yeah, because without this you can't really do this. So I do want to continue doing it at some capacity, and we do it, and we don't really have, we try to do it like once a month. So I think that's reasonable. Also, kind of thinking forward, I'd like to make things a little bit more interesting. I'd like to bring some more guests on, kind of thing. I kind of experimented as a joke on our 9th episode about if is toast a sandwich, where like I asked my local cafe owner about his opinions on that. So I'd actually like to, like, on kind of how Paul mentions on like the more serious side of things, like I'd like to get some people who are maybe who some experts or some people who know what they're talking about some of the changes, because I think that'd be really interesting to see. Some people are trying to implement, these kind of changes. So whether it be like an urban planning change or a social change or just like, or a social, I think it'd be fun to get some experts and some guests on podcasts to kind of add some nuance to the ideas of like, hey, I'd like to do this. How would you do this? And how like what are like, what are the challenges and what are the benefits, or like what are the negatives? So I think that'd be fun just to get some guests every once in a while, just to one, have an extra voice, a little bit of not just us thinking like are saying our opinions, or if we're coming from with a little bit of knowledge and examples, it'd be nice to get some expert opinion and some insight for that. And if there's anything special planned, Paul and I, we have we want to do something special for if we ever make it to the 100th episode, and it has something to do with the silly intro we have. But yes,
Yeah, that's true. We talked about that. Yeah. We'll just leave that to people's imagination, though. But if you, have you listened to an episode before or no? Okay. Good.
it's good journalism.
Right.
That's
right.
true. Which episodes did you listen to? I'm a little bit afraid. Oh God, the first few. That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, skip 2 and 3. That's what I tell everybody. I think that was also a lesson, was just like being a better editor. Like obviously I come from a journalism background, and you got to apply what you do to like copywriting to editing as well, even more so really. So I think that was a big lesson from, I think it was episode 2 or 3. Like it was really long. I think it was just really repetitive, and it was just a bad job of just like, not everything needs to be in there. Like if we go like, I think it was my fault too. I went off on a ramble, and like I should have just cut like literally 20 minutes of myself out, and that was a good lesson, so that's fine. So if anybody starts from the beginning and listens to that, they'll just stop listening entirely. So
Yeah. And we do tend to go on rants and stuff for like 15 minutes or something.
yeah, I've been a lot more totalitarian in my edit cutting. So I think I try to keep everything as ideally it's 45 minutes, but like I don't want it to be longer than an hour, because I feel like that's too long of us just talking.
Right. Also, too, to get back to your question, like, wanted Norman to speak first, which was really good because I understand better just from hearing what he said, like future possible directions. Because all I was gonna say is I'm like kind of running out of ideas for what I want to change. Like I have to kind of, well, not running out of idea. Like there's plenty of things you want to change about the world, but something that's like kind of fun or interesting and like that people would want to listen to. Because like some things you want to change about the world is like it only affects you personally, or it only affects like an issue that doesn't touch that many people, so they might not relate that well, or they just aren't interested, or whatever. And so I try to choose subjects that people are interested in. But I actually, when we had the technical difficulties on episode 10 and then re-recorded it, I like changed my topic, because my original topic was like something that's interesting and personal to me, but like I was trying to talk about it and it just wasn't sounding interesting at all. So I was like, but yeah, so I think it would be really helpful for us to have guests in particular to add some like flavor. And everybody has, kind of to get back to what Norman said at one point, is everybody has different stuff that they would change about the world. And there's a lot of nuance to that. Like some people are really concerned about some specific subject that you've never heard anything about. And it would be good on some level to hear from people who would like to change something serious, but it kind of adds some, it kind of refreshes it a bit if it's somebody new, because then we're really curious about it. Also, like we haven't ever heard of something like that, possibly. So it adds a bit more intrigue or like randomness to the interaction. Yeah. I would say that's a good direction for us to go in.
How does your background reflect to the thoughts that you have on the podcast? But I rephrased it into a more simpler thing when you did the recording, like when you talked about it. How's your past experience influencing the way you think about a lot of the topics that you talk about in your podcast?
Paul, talk about your background and answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the most the thing that stands out the most immediately is obviously that I'm American and Norman is Canadian, and so our perspectives about things that we want to change in society are kind of going to be based on that on some level. Like the things that affect him most personally are things that affect Canadians more so than Americans, probably, or at least that affect people in Vancouver specifically more so than in, Albuquerque, New Mexico, because like he lives in a place where it rains and he talked about umbrellas and raincoats. I live in the desert, so to me it's you know, raincoats and umbrellas are a thing of, they're a bit foreign to me in a sense. And then, even though obviously it rains in America too, but our very personal and unique experiences can make bigger differences on certain topics. And then, in terms of my background, I've been in school for a really long time, so I've studied a lot of different subjects. So I studied Spanish, and then I studied like urban planning and environmental planning and design, and then I studied in the medical field for a couple of years, in like neurology, and then I left that, and now I'm studying to be a civil engineer. So it's been kind of all over the place, and I think that absolutely comes out in the podcast as well. Our unique experiences also play a factor in that. Our shared experiences as well, that we both went to Spain and we went on some road trips and stuff like that as well. So we have some shared experiences that we talk about, but also share other shared things, like we both speak Spanish and kind of are aware of cultural things in Spain and in Latin America to some extent. And then we talk about things that are related to our work also, like, give me an example, Norman, I'm blanking.
Flexible start times. We just did this on Tuesday.
Yeah, unnecessary acronyms, for example, is like from my personal approach, and weird words. The unnecessary acronyms thing is like, because in medicine and professional fields in general, but in medicine especially, there's just billions of acronyms. And so when I was in the kind of medical field, that was something that piqued my interest to satirize and stuff. And then Norman can kind of speak to his experiences with his part.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I used to be a journalist. I still do some freelance stuff. I usually, so I keep saying I used to be, even though I sometimes still do that kind of stuff. But I too was in school for a long time. I did kinesiology, and then I switched to Spanish, and then I went back to journalism. So, but I think my background helps in the podcast where I can get the best out of Paul, because I can I can essentially interview him when he has a great idea, because sometimes he's like, and that's my idea, and I'm like, let's dig into it, and I can use those those interviewing skills to really to get the best and the most out of Paul's great ideas, and yeah. Well, off the top of my head, I'm like just like as a hobby, I really like getting into like urban planning stuff. There's quite a few great urban planning like YouTube channels and stuff that are also very specifically Canadian as well, just by coincidence. So I'd love to get more into that, to be honest, and just get some people into that, whether it's urban, like how we build our cities, because I mean, Paul would know very well, because especially American cities are just built around the suburb, but also Canadian cities as well. But yeah, I'm really into urban planning topics. So I'd love to get into that, and also some food stuff. I love food. I like talking about food. It's hard to talk about what kind of changes about food, but there are definitely some that I can get into. And maybe one more off the top of my head is I'd like to I'd really like to lean on to our audience a little bit more. We have a small audience, obviously it's not super big, but I'd love to get into our audience's ideas as more to get their opinions, because that'd be fun. I'd love to hear what other people like, kind of what Paul was saying, even just from guests. I'd like to also kind of, if we can build like a small little community or whatever, that'd be fun just to get, and then to share people's what they would change, because it could be very specific like Paul was saying, or it could be very broad, and I think it'd be another fun and engaging way just to also just get people involved. And who knows, maybe somebody's listening and they hear how somebody can change something, or an idea that somebody wants to change, and maybe they'll start changing something in the real world, so that would be fun.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Uh, I would literally like almost anybody, because it's literally just like, I think the diversity of like, if you ask somebody what would you change is so huge, and I think that's kind of the best part of this topic, is that you could get an answer that's something that you absolutely have never heard of in your entire life. Like, they would want to change something that is totally new to everybody listening and totally new to us. And so I think that could be very cool. I also think it's good to get a diversity because, like, for example, I feel like most of my stuff centers around something kind of political in a way. At least, a lot of the things that I've said I would change are political on some level. And so I think it would be good to hear from some people about stuff that's maybe not political, or then other people might say something political, but from a different perspective. And so that's good too. But, to hear about different topics from different people, I think would be fascinating. People would say very different stuff.
What has the process been of making the podcast happen?
Well, the process starts by us texting like, when can you do it, and then committing to a time, and then rescheduling that time at least once.
Yeah.
And then after that, obviously, my process is like I have an idea list, so I always have that. Usually, I think my best ideas just come randomly, just like in the wild. I'm just like having a conversation with someone. I'm like, oh shit, I've got to write this down right now. And then I like to kind of more or less. Sometimes I'll write what I want to say, like not so much as script, but just kind of like an open thought process of what I want to talk about, so I can stay on topic and also remember what I'm thinking about in the moment. So, because I might be writing it out a week or two or a month before. So yeah, usually I'll either have bullet points, or I'll just have I'll write my thoughts out, and then try and just kind of just keep that as my guide. So it's not so much a script, other than I have a record of what I thought and what I want to speak about, and then also a guide when a reference guide while we're speaking. And then after that comes, what about you, Paul?
Yeah, pretty similar process, except like I usually come up with my ideas kind of last minute, which is kind of bad in some ways maybe, but I think it's also good because it's very fresh in my mind. I feel like because I'm kind of a passionate person, in that like I will just suddenly be passionate about something one day, and then like the next day I'm not really thinking about it. So for me, it's kind of good to come up with something a little bit last minute, because then I think that I will be speaking about it more enthusiastically. And then, for the post recording stuff, I don't have any skills with audio and video and stuff, and I could learn it, but I just haven't done it. So Norman, Norman kind of takes charge of that stuff.
Yeah, I do all the production kind of stuff. I am the producer, you might say. But usually that always ends up. I usually do all the work in a cafe that I go to, and I just sit down. I do my audio first, and then yeah, I just go through the pod. Like the podcast, I usually just edit as I go. I think that's just the most efficient way, and then I listen to it on the way back home and in the shower, just to make sure if I didn't make any mistakes. We have a little intro music, a little interlude music that's just some like copyright free stuff, or yeah, basically. Actually, that's something I might want to change, is just the music. Maybe I might maybe get one of my musician friends to maybe write us something that's a little bit just more personable and unique, because I think that would be nice to have something that's ours, you know. But yeah, that's the process. And then the most tedious part, like I said, is when I make the video version. Is I just make a quick little like an audiogram for the YouTube version, and then after that, then I find parts in the podcast that I want to make, and then I make that into reels essentially, and then I share that on our Instagram, on our YouTube Shorts, and our Twitter. Which yeah.
While listening to your podcast, have you ever thought of things that you should have said?
You know, surprisingly, I don't think about it too much. Like, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Like, I do. Like, I listen to our podcast probably the most, because I do all the editing, and I just want to make sure it's good, or that's something that I'm happy with. But yeah, I don't think actually too much. I'm kind of like, it's not very consequential, our podcast, so it's not like, oh, if I said that, something would have been better or different, or so yeah, surprisingly, no, I don't. If some cringe moments, yeah, I try to also edit those cringe moments out too. Just for the sake of Paul and I.
The cringe moments. Yeah. I do listen to them all too. And I don't know, mostly I think in part you're hinting at, like, do we kind of have that experience of like, whoa, my voice sounds weird, or I sounded weird saying that, or whatever. And not really. I mean, I guess in the modern time, usually most people are used to hearing themselves recorded now, whereas we didn't used to be, maybe. But also, it's just like a conversation with a friend, so it's actually just kind of a nice, like, memory. Like, it's kind of a way of remembering the conversation that we had. But I can say that, like, I don't really want to say things that are too political or something, because I don't want that to be the focus of things. I don't want people to, like, focus on that, even though that's typically I end up wanting to change something that's connected to politics in some way. But I don't want that to be the focus, and for listeners to, like, engage on send me a hate message about my politics or something. Like, I don't want that to be it. I've tried to, like, I don't post political things on Facebook or whatever. It's just not my way of doing things, and I don't really want to engage in that way on the internet. Like, but so in that sense, I don't want people to get mad or, like, come at me about something that I said on it. But that's the only way that I'm like, I don't want to engage with that. But outside of that, I don't feel any, like, specific way about the things that I said or listening to them again.
Is there anything I missed, or anything else you would like to add about your experience so far, like with the podcast and everything?
Yes, this is the classic journalist strategy. Never forget to ask, is there anything I missed? I think, I mean, what Paul just said, like, they're really nice memories, and they are really nice memories. It's true. I really do like. It is fun to listen back and make sure everything is is like when I'm doing my editing and doing the final listen through, I'm like, it's just really fun just to relive that conversation again, because it is, yeah, it's really interesting. I didn't actually think about it too much, kind of like it's it like just if you could go back in time and listen to the conversations with your friends from back in the day, that would be really interesting and an enjoyable experience. And this is like that. So I didn't
Yeah,
actually realize
yeah.
that. So it's a really fun process though, and hopefully people will get that energy too when they listen, because it is two actual friends talking. It's not it's not two just people who just wanted to come together and like, let's make some media. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot of the times if I'm listening to it, the same things that made me laugh in the podcast the first time make me laugh again. So that's pretty that's pretty special, like he's saying, to have a recording of a conversation with a friend. It's kind of like because you don't generally have that, right? Like you remember sometimes conversations that you had with a friend, but usually only if they really stick out. Like that was the most ridiculous conversation we ever had. But it's actually very special to go back to a conversation and be like, holy shit, that was hilarious. And I was starting to forget about that thing that we said. Because you do start to forget a lot of things.
all right, sweet, fantastic, awesome. Well then, well, thanks for making the time. This was fun, and can can you I'll send you my email. I don't think I've ever sent you my email. I'll send you my email for the audio.